October 16, 1946. Inside a converted gymnasium in Nuremberg, Germany, 3 wooden gallows stand in silence. The walls are painted black. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and the stench of fear. Outside, the ruins of a defeated nation lie in darkness. Inside, the architects of the Third Reich are about to face their final judgment. Joachim von Ribbentrop, Hitler's foreign minister, the man who negotiated the pact with Stalin, who declared war on America, who stood beside the Fuhrer as Europe burned, is about to climb 13 steps to his death. He has spent the last 11 months in a cold cell, listening to the testimony of his crimes. He has heard the survivors. He has seen the films from the camps. And now, in the final minutes of his life, he will do something that will puzzle witnesses and historians for decades to come. He will smile. How did a champagne salesman become the diplomat of genocide? How did a man who once mingled with British aristocrats end up signing the orders that sent millions to their graves? And in those last moments, as the rope waited above him, what was going through his mind? To understand how we got here, to this gymnasium, to these gallows, to this final reckoning, we have to go back to the beginning. Joachim von Ribbentrop was born in 1893 in Wesel, Germany, the son of a career army officer. The von in his name, the mark of German nobility, was a lie. He would buy it later, in 1925, by convincing a distant aunt to adopt him. It was the first of many deceits in a life built on ambition, insecurity, and desperate social climbing. Ribbentrop fought in the First World War, earned an Iron Cross, and emerged into the chaos of Weimar Germany with no clear future. He drifted. He sold wine. He married the daughter of a wealthy champagne producer, Otto Henkel, and for a time, he lived the life of a comfortable businessman, traveling between Berlin, Paris, and London, speaking passable English and French, learning the manners of the European elite. But Ribbentrop was restless, hollow. He craved recognition. He wanted to matter. And in 1932, in the drawing rooms of Berlin's upper class, he found a man who would give him purpose, Adolf Hitler. Ribbentrop offered Hitler something the Nazi Party desperately needed: access. He had connections to industrialists, to foreign diplomats, to the old aristocracy that still looked down on the crude, beer hall rabble of the Nazi movement. Ribbentrop opened doors. He hosted meetings at his villa in the wealthy suburb of Dahlem. He whispered in the ears of conservatives who thought they could control Hitler, use him, tame him. They were wrong, and Ribbentrop knew it. By 1933, Hitler was chancellor. By 1934, Ribbentrop was Hitler's informal foreign policy advisor, operating outside the traditional foreign ministry, reporting directly to the Fuhrer. He had no qualifications, no diplomatic training, no ideology beyond personal loyalty. But he had one skill that mattered above all else in the Third Reich. He told Hitler what Hitler wanted to hear. In 1935, Ribbentrop negotiated the Anglo-German Naval Agreement, allowing Germany to rebuild its navy in violation of Versailles. Hitler was delighted. The British thought they were being clever. Ribbentrop was promoted. In 1936, he was sent to London as ambassador. It was a disaster. Ribbentrop arrived in Britain convinced that the English aristocracy secretly admired Hitler. He threw lavish parties. He gave the Nazi salute at Buckingham Palace. He lectured British officials on the inevitability of German dominance. The British press mocked him. Diplomats despised him. Winston Churchill called him the man with the Hitler mustache on his brain. But Hitler didn't care. In February 1938, he recalled Ribbentrop from London and made him foreign minister of the Third Reich, the old guard of the German Foreign Office. Career diplomats, many of them quietly anti-Nazi, were sidelined. Ribbentrop purged them. He filled the ministry with loyalists, yes-men, and SS officers. From that moment on, German foreign policy was not about diplomacy. It was about preparing for war. March 1939. German troops march into Prague. Czechoslovakia ceases to exist. The Munich Agreement, the great triumph of appeasement, signed just 6 months earlier, is revealed as a sham. Europe holds its breath. Ribbentrop is now one of the most powerful men in Germany. He sits in his office on the Wilhelmstrasse, surrounded by maps and telephones, orchestrating the dismantling of the Versailles Order. He is arrogant, vain. He wears his party pin every day and speaks of Hitler with religious reverence. Behind his back, even other Nazis call him Germany's #1 parrot. But he is useful, because in the summer of 1939, Ribbentrop will pull off the diplomatic coup that makes World War II possible. Hitler wants Poland, but he knows that Britain and France have guaranteed Polish independence. He knows that if he invades, they will declare war, and he knows that if that happens, he cannot afford a two-front war. He cannot fight the West while the Soviet Union looms in the East. So Hitler gives Ribbentrop an impossible task. Make a deal with Stalin. Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia are supposed to be mortal enemies. For years, Hitler has ranted about the Bolshevik threat, the Jewish Marxist conspiracy, the Slavic subhumans who must be crushed. For years, Stalin has watched the Nazis' arm expand, knowing they will eventually turn east. The two regimes have spent a decade preparing to destroy each other. But now, in the summer of 1939, Ribbentrop begins secret negotiations with Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov. The talks are fast, cynical, and utterly ruthless. Ideology means nothing. Territory means everything. On August 23, 1939, Ribbentrop flies to Moscow. He lands in the middle of the night. The airport is lined with Soviet flags, and in a bizarre gesture of hospitality, with swastika banners, Ribbentrop is driven to the Kremlin, where Stalin himself is waiting. They drink vodka. They toast. They carve up Eastern Europe like a birthday cake. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is signed in the early hours of August 24th. On the surface, it is a non-aggression treaty. In secret protocols, hidden from the world, Germany and the Soviet Union agree to divide Poland between them. The Soviets get the Baltic states, Eastern Poland, and Bessarabia. Germany gets Western Poland and a free hand in the West. Ribbentrop returns to Berlin a hero. Hitler is ecstatic. The way is clear. 1 week later, on September 1st, 1939, German tanks roll into Poland. 2 weeks after that, Soviet tanks roll in from the east. Poland is erased from the map. Britain and France declare war on Germany, but they do nothing to save Poland. The Second World War has begun. For the next 2 years, Ribbentrop is at the center of Nazi Germany's diplomatic machine. Such as it is, diplomacy in the Third Reich is not about negotiation. It is about intimidation, deceit, and the preparation of conquest. In April 1940, Germany invades Denmark and Norway. Ribbentrop sends telegrams to neutral capitals, warning them not to interfere. In May, the Wehrmacht smashes into France. Ribbentrop watches as the French sign their surrender in the same railway car where Germany had signed the armistice in 1918. He calls it the greatest moment of my life. But by 1941, the mask is slipping. Ribbentrop is no longer shaping events. He is merely announcing them. Hitler makes the decisions. Göring, Himmler, Goebbels, and the generals execute them. Ribbentrop is reduced to delivering ultimatums and signing declarations of war. In June 1941, Germany invades the Soviet Union. Ribbentrop's Great Pact, the deal that was supposed to secure Germany's eastern flank, is torn up after less than 2 years. Stalin is stunned. Ribbentrop is humiliated, but he says nothing. He signs the paperwork. He obeys. And then, in December 1941, comes the moment that will seal his fate. On December 7th, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. The United States, shocked and enraged, declares war on Japan. Hitler is not obligated to join the fight. Germany and Japan have a defensive alliance. It does not require Germany to declare war on America. In fact, many in the German High Command beg Hitler not to do it. Germany is already fighting Britain and the Soviet Union. Why add the industrial colossus of the United States to the list? But Hitler wants it. He believes America is weak, divided, controlled by Jews. He believes the Japanese will tie down the U.S. Navy in the Pacific. And on December 11, 1941, he summons Ribbentrop to the Reichstag. Ribbentrop reads the declaration. Germany is now at war with the United States of America. It is the beginning of the end. From this point on, Ribbentrop is a ghost. He attends meetings, but he has no power. He still holds the title of foreign minister, but there is no foreign policy anymore. Only conquest, occupation, and extermination. He knows about the final solution. He signs deportation orders. He coordinates with the SS on the logistics of genocide. He is not an architect of the Holocaust like Himmler or Heydrich, but he is a facilitator, a bureaucrat of death. As the war turns against Germany, Ribbentrop grows desperate. He proposes wild schemes, a separate peace with Stalin, a deal with the British, a last-ditch alliance with Japan. All are rejected. Hitler no longer listens to him. Goebbels mocks him in his diary. Even SS officers joke about the champagne salesman. In April 1945, as Soviet tanks roll into Berlin, Ribbentrop flees north. He dyes his hair. He wears a fake mustache. He hides in a boarding house in Hamburg, using the name Herizer. He believes somehow that the Allies will need him, that he can negotiate, that his connections, his charm, his experience will save him. He is wrong. On June 14, 1945, British soldiers find him in bed. He does not resist. He is arrested, stripped of his disguise, and sent to Nuremberg to stand trial for his crimes. The Nuremberg trials begin on November 20th, 1945. 24 defendants sit in the dock, guarded by American military police. They're the surviving leadership of the Third Reich: Göring, Hess, Keitel, Jodl, Speer, Frank, Kaltenbrunner, and Ribbentrop. They are charged with crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The evidence against them is overwhelming. Ribbentrop sits in the front row, next to Hermann Göring. The two men despise each other. Göring still has charisma, even in captivity. He jokes with the guards, cross-examines witnesses, and plays to the press. Ribbentrop, by contrast, is a shell. His hair is gray. His face is gaunt. He wears dark sunglasses because the lights in the courtroom hurt his eyes. He mumbles. He stares at his hands. The prosecution presents its case. They show films from Auschwitz, Bergen-Belsen, Dachau. They read testimony from survivors. They submit documents, thousands of them bearing Ribbentrop's signature, orders for deportations, notes from meetings where the final solution was discussed, telegrams coordinating with the SS. Ribbentrop insists he did not know, that he was merely a diplomat, that he only followed orders. It is a lie, and everyone knows it. When Ribbentrop takes a stand in his own defense, he is a disaster. He rambles. He contradicts himself. He blames everyone, the generals, the party, the Jews. He claims he tried to prevent war, that he begged Hitler to negotiate. The judges are unmoved. Even his own lawyer seems exhausted. Ribbentrop's strategy, if it can be called that, is to portray himself as a loyal servant who had no real power. He insists that he opposed the invasion of the Soviet Union, that he warned Hitler about declaring war on America, that he knew nothing about the concentration camps. But the documents tell a different story. On October 25, 1941, Ribbentrop's foreign ministry sent a memo to the SS. There are no objections to the deportation of Jews to the East. In 1942, his office worked with Adolf Eichmann to coordinate the deportation of Jews from France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. In 1943, he personally pressured the governments of Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria to hand over their Jewish populations. He knew. He participated. He enabled. The trial drags on for months. By the summer of 1946, The defendants are exhausted. Some have collapsed mentally. Rudolf Hess is catatonic. Julius Streicher rants about Jewish conspiracies. Ribbentrop withdraws into himself. He writes letters to his wife and children, insisting that history will vindicate him. He prays. He reads the Bible. On September 30th, 1946, the verdicts are announced. Ribbentrop is found guilty on all counts. The sentence, death by hanging. He shows no reaction. He removes his headphones. He stares straight ahead. That night, back in his cell, he tells the prison chaplain, "I am ready." October 16th, 1946. The executions are scheduled to begin at 1 a.m. The gallows have been constructed in the prison gymnasium by an American engineer, Master Sergeant John C. Woods. Woods is a controversial figure. Some say he is experienced, others claim he is incompetent. The gallows are crude. The trapdoors are narrow. The ropes are short. Ribbentrop is the first to die. At 1:11 a.m., 2 military policemen enter his cell. They bind his hands behind his back with a leather strap. They lead him down a corridor, through a door, and into the gymnasium. The room is brightly lit. Journalists and military officials stand along the walls. The 3 gallows stand in a row, draped in black curtains. A 4th structure, a platform for witnesses, looms to the side. Ribbentrop walks slowly. He is calm. His face is pale, but his expression is composed. He wears a dark blue suit, a white shirt, and no tie. His hands are bound, but his posture is straight. The witnesses will later describe what happens next in different ways. Some say he looked defiant. Others say he looked resigned. But nearly all of them mention the same strange detail. He smiled. It was not a broad grin, not a laugh. It was a faint, tight-lipped smile, the kind you might give to a stranger in an elevator. Brief, polite, almost nervous. And then it was gone. He climbs the 13 steps to the gallows. At the top, Sergeant Woods asks if he has any last words. Ribbentrop nods. His voice is hoarse but steady. "God protect Germany. God have mercy on my soul. My last wish is that Germany's unity shall be preserved and that an understanding be reached between East and West. I wish peace of the world." He pauses. Then, in a sudden burst of emotion, he adds, "I ask God to accept me with mercy." The chaplain, U.S. Army Captain Henry Gurek, murmurs a prayer. A black hood is placed over Ribbentrop's head. The noose is tightened around his neck. Sergeant Wood steps back. He pulls a lever. The trapdoor opens. Ribbentrop drops. But something goes wrong. The rope is too short. The drop is not sufficient to break his neck cleanly. Instead, he strangles. His body convulses. His legs kick. For somewhere between 14 and 28 minutes, accounts vary. Joachim von Ribbentrop hangs in the gymnasium, slowly suffocating to death. The witnesses watch in silence. The journalists scribble notes. The chaplain looks away. Finally, the convulsions stop. A military doctor steps forward, checks for a pulse, and pronounces him dead. His body is cut down and placed in a wooden coffin. Over the next 2 hours, 10 more men will hang from the same gallows. Keitel, Kaltenbrunner, Rosenberg, Frank Frick, Streicher, Sauckel, Jodl, Seisencourt, and finally, at 2:57 a.m., Arthur Seisencourt, the last man to die. Hermann Göring, the highest-ranking Nazi defendant, cheated the gallows. Hours before the executions, he swallowed a cyanide capsule hidden in his cell. He died in his bunk, robbing the Allies of their star defendant. But Ribbentrop did not cheat. He climbed the steps. He spoke his final words. He died slowly, painfully, in the gymnasium of a prison in the ruins of the Reich he helped to build. And then, in the cold light of dawn, his body was loaded onto a truck, driven to a crematorium in Munich, and burned. His ashes were scattered in a river. No grave, no memorial, no trace. Joachim von Ribbentrop was erased. Why did he smile? In the 78 years since that night, historians, psychologists, and witnesses have offered theories. Some say it was nerves, a reflex, a meaningless twitch of the face in the final moments of life. Others say it was defiance, a last act of contempt for his executioners. A few suggest it was relief that after months of dread, he was finally free of waiting. But there is another possibility. Perhaps, in that moment, Ribbentrop believed he was doing something noble. Perhaps he thought he was dying for Germany, for loyalty, for duty. Perhaps he convinced himself that history would remember him not as a war criminal, but as a servant of his Führer, a man who stayed faithful to the end. If so, he was wrong. History does not remember Joachim von Ribbentrop as a martyr. It remembers him as a footnote, a vain, mediocre man who climbed his way into the inner circle of evil and spent his final years signing death warrants for millions. He was not a true believer like Goebbels. He was not a sadist like Himmler. He was not a military genius like Manstein or Rommel. He was an opportunist, a social climber who found himself at the right cocktail party at the right time and ended up in a room where the fate of the world was decided. And in the end, when the reckoning came, he died badly, not as a hero, not as a monster of legend, but as a man in a hood, kicking on a rope, gasping for air while the world watched and felt nothing. The smile was a lie, just like everything else in his life. But the rope was real, and the justice, however imperfect, however delayed, was real too. Joachim von Ribbentrop died on October 16th, 1946. His crimes did not die with him. They are written in the archives. They are carved into memorials. They are remembered by the descendants of the millions he helped to murder, and they will never be forgotten.